There isn't a bulletproof plan out there besides this community and what it represents. You stick with this and you're going to be just fine. Give or take, even if it was 250, either way, if you got $100, right, and you sacked on the next one, you're going to be fine. You'll be a millionaire in 6 years, right? 4 years to the next one, 2 years into the next one. With $100, you'd be a millionaire.
Let's go
Anywhere
over a
else?
couple. Let's go over a couple stats. So you've got on the Binance Smart Chain, you've got PancakeSwap that did 190,000 X from its bottom to its top, and it's still going. Right, it retraced just like the rest of the markets, but it's still going. When you look at why that happened, it's because you don't have to sell it. When they created single-sided staking, they opened the ability for you to stake cake, and you'll be able to do the same thing with Pulsex. Now you can stake a token and now earn something else that you get to go dump. Right? So instead of just earning yield on itself, and then eventually people having to, shave their yield or, sell it down to get any value out, they created a system where you take a token, you stake it, and you get something else, and that something else is the dumping token. Or you can choose to hold or whatever, right? But everything single-sided stakes over there on Pancake, it's all very speculative. Some of the stuff does well, some doesn't, or whatever, but the yields end up being typically 80%. But then simultaneous to that, the value of the underlying token that you'd never have to sell just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. I think after the initial dump of Pulsex, because there should be one, right? Because of the difference in quantities of wallets, there's like 60 or 70,000 additional wallets that'll own Pulsex, as opposed to that will own Pulse, like right at the fork. So that's like at least 70,000 people that don't own Pulse, that want Pulse, many of which have said they're going to dump their Pulsex. So when thousands of people are dumping their
Jesse, there's one correction in that. It's not 70,000. It's 69,999. Because I'm not doing that.
It's challenging, right? Because all these people a lot of those people believe that, oh, well, I can just dump this and I can get Pulse, but they're not thinking about the ratios, right? If you're dumping a whole bunch of one thing, and you're getting another thing, and there's thousands of people doing the same thing, you'll actually see Pulse pump. You'll see Pulsex dumping severely. But from its bottom, at least, I'm certainly going to buy. If it does that, I'm certainly going to be buying some. And then the hope is eventually that the single-sided staking feature of Pulsex starts to pop off. It will require adoption. On Binance Smart Chain, there's millions of users. There's dozens of projects launched daily. Most of them are, shit coins. But honestly, it's okay if we see some of that on Pulse Chain. We need to see as many things as possible launched on Pulse Chain. Right now, what do we have the single-sided stake for? Nothing, right? On testnet, there is a random made-up token, the Pulse Reward token. We're going to have to see dozens and dozens of projects willing to say, hey, here's a sum of tokens that we'd like you all to vote on to be distributed as a reward token. And once that's done, and Pulsex actually builds itself up like Pancake did, then it's game over. Pulsex never has to be sold. It's got the buy and burn feature in combination with that. So, like, the price should severely go up. If Pancake did 190,000x, Pulsex, especially after a giant dump that we hear might be coming, could do even better.
Hey, Benjamin, this is Ralphie. Hey, man, quit giving away our secret sauce, brother.
So Binance Chain has millions of users. Pulse Chain has a couple 100,000 users initially. So you could think of that as opportunity cost. And if the powers that be do the right thing with marketing, if the word gets out with the free airdrop, if we all do our part sharing on Twitter and getting the word out and stuff, there's no reason why, how many of these other chains have a cool swapping platform that has a buy and burn and single-sided staking? I don't think SpookySwap even does that. So like between this and Binance Smart Chain's Pancake, it's like there should be lots of users coming over to play on Pulse Chain and on Pulsex. I mean, because the yield, you can't hide that yield, right? People are going to see that the yields, and they're going to say, oh, wow, look at, these returns over there, 80% or whatever they end up being. People chase these yields.
So, Jesse, I got a question for you. Which token do you think it would have been better? What will see more profits after 2 years if you take into account the single-sided staking pool and the rewards you'll get from that, right? If you line it up, which one do you think would be better after a 2-year period?
What's different about Pulse Chain than some other chains is it's got this stuff launching right at the beginning. So you've got like Binance Smart Chain. I don't think it launched with Pancake. It took years before Pancake came around. So if you put them side by side, well, Pancake still did better in a shorter period of time, actually. So, like, there's no doubt that it should do well. But then you launch a good protocol at the same exact time, like Pulsex, which has really cool features to it as well. And it's like, well, one's going to do better than the other, but there's no telling which one. So you just hold both, Well, some of the success of a layer 2 is because of the layer 1. Like, because everything's paired to Pulse, as an example. So if Pulse goes up in value, everything else also goes up in value. Everything will chase it because they're paired to each other. If Pulse doubles in price, the things that it's paired to, which is like everything else will also double in price.
But we're missing one thing from PancakeSwap, right? That's the auto cake, manual cake. Now, we cannot have that with Pulsex. We can't have auto Pulsex, manual Pulsex, because Pulsex is deflationary. Not another one will be minted. So we cannot do auto manual Pulsex. But there's one token that we have that's going to be inflationary that we could potentially do that with. That will give it some like inherent value or beyond just a fee generation type thing, right? Or a incentive generation, right? We could have auto incentive, manual incentive, because that is our inflationary token. So that's what I was saying.
Well, okay, I understand 100%, but why do we need that? Why do you feel that we need like an equivalent to the auto cake and manual cake? Why do you think that that's necessary in our ecosystem? I'm just curious.
It brings more in my head, right? In my head, I could be way off. It brings more market value to that coin beyond just being an extra thing paired with things that you want. Now, that's always a good incentive or a good reason to have the incentive token, right? Is like, hey, I can go dump it or sell it for PLSX or PLS or HEX, right? I can go to one of those pools, no problem. Or I could join one of these pools, no problem. Or also, you can have it be a controlled level of inflation added into its own pool. So, hey, maybe I don't need to go market dump it, but I can just continually compound over on this side at 30 to 60%.
I think that within like 1 or 2 years that Pulsex will probably start an organic more movement. Like it's going to pump all that through that whole period, I think. I'm pretty sure. I mean, if it was to pump to its end rate determinant price, whatever the fuck that is, I think that it would have its fastest run within the first year and a half, for sure. But still continue to appreciate in price.
So you just say which one?
It's going to burn, bro.
Which one?
Like there's so much Pulsex that's going to burn within those periods of time that I kind of agree with Hamish. I think Pulsex is going to have the best opportunity, in my opinion, now. Now, we all know that it's like a 5-to-1 ratio with Pulsex holders to Pulse holders. So I think that's incredibly important to establish the understanding that there's probably going to be some people that are going to speculate on the Pulse chain side because it is the network token, and a lot of people that are going to need it because they didn't even get into the sacrifice. So I think both of them have a great ability to pump, because the people that are going to be missing the sacrifice for Pulse chain and be getting into there and was getting into Pulsex, you're still going to have people who are going to need to get Pulse and Pulsex, and they're both going to be burning right from Jump Street too. So it's important to try to consider and take understanding on whether you really think that Pulse chain, which I think before you did the sacrifice that you might have made these commitments previous. The reason why we say you shouldn't have expectations, because sometimes the explaining the X factor on how quickly some of these things can raise in value is almost unhealthy, right? Some people lose their fucking minds with how rich they get so quick because of some of these things. Take a certain percent of it and forget you even have it. Not literally, but in some sort of respect.
So there's a built-in feature in Pulsex. So right, there's no staking feature in Pulsex like there is with Hex, where you're locked in for a maximum of 55.55. But with Pulsex, check this concept out. Now with Pulsex, it doesn't have that locked-in staking feature, but as a concept in my mind, it's going to be very similar, and here's why. So let's say that one-sided staking mechanism in Pulsex is paying an APY of 40 to 50%, right? And so according to the rule of 72, I take my APY and I divide it by 72, and that tells me how long it's going to take for my principal to double. Now, if it's correcting, right? If it's correcting, and let's say we're somewhere down the road in the next 24 months and it's doing a correction and it's pulling back 70%, well, in my mind, I can go, okay, but I'm getting freaking my coins are doubling, or my stack is doubling if I'm getting 50% about every year and a half. So if it's pulling back 70%, I go, well, okay, it's correcting, but I'm gonna have twice as many coins within 18 months at 45% APY. So that's what I wanted to share, is like that feature, that built-in feature, it might have the same impact, meaning I'm not going to be pushing that buy button because I know I'm getting so much more coin from participating in that feature.
I agree. I think it just takes some management of the incentive that you get to utilize those rewards in a way that you'd be able to actually make up any impermanent loss that you may have. I find it more fun to provide liquidity with pairs that I enjoy both of the tokens, right? So it doesn't really bother me to have liquidity leave me waning on one side and heavy on the other, especially when, like what you had explained, there may be a 70% correction where now it's going to go the other direction completely across my range, ripping all those fees back again. And then I can either take those incentives and stack on top of what I have, giving me a bigger pool, right, than everybody else, paying me more incentive, or speculate on other stuff like buy Hex, buy eHex, buy pHex, buy both of them, and then just make that pair, that other eHex pHex pair, another liquidity pairing that I love to have both of those too. And then I can get the incentive just off of that other pool that has nothing to really do with Pulsex, I guess. Like this Pulsex would be like the farm in which I would be explaining that, I guess.
Hey, check this out. Oh, sorry. I was going to go back real quickly. Just check this out. And I'm sure most of us in the room are familiar with the rule of 72, but man, it's going to show us when we do the staking of the Pulsex, it's going to show like a forecast APY. And so again, that formula is you take your APY and you divide it by 72, and it tells you the number of months it takes for your coins to double. So if I'm getting 72% APY, that means in 1 year If I had 100 coins at the end of that 1 year, I'm going to have 200 coins. So what that means is if we're in the middle of a 50% correction, but I'm not saying that's what it's going to be, 72% APY. I'm just using it as an example because it's so simple with that calculation. So if we're in the middle of 50% correction, but I know I'm getting 72 APY, I can go, well, shoot, at the end of this year, I've made up that transitory loss in the doubling of my coins. And then sure, it's going to correct, but is it going to keep its upward climb? Yeah, I would think that it's going to.
I would agree. I'd have to agree with that.
Yeah, it's basically a way of mitigating your losses in a sense.
Or
Yeah.
or being able to have diamond hands in the midst of a correction. Yeah.
So what do you do?
You could even scrape profits, bro, and still have. You could still have more because you don't need to make 100%, right? Even with the 72 APY, you know that you're going to have 100 extra tokens that are there. You could just have 75 extra tokens and take 25 for yourself, right? You take a vacation, go somewhere, right?
So what is he talking about though? Are you talking about your own little plan of staking Pulsex somehow?
Yeah, there's a one-sided stake that you can do with Pulsex.
Well, no,
and
that's for the party token. That's for the party token.
Yeah, let me explain how this works. So Pulsex there won't be any single-sided staking at first. Maybe there might be if the Pulsex dev team decides to make one. So if they did decide to do a staking pool that they made, that would be kind of neat. And something they can do right away. However, the community, the Pulsex community, needs to make a proposal on a currency in which they value. Maybe somebody buys a bunch of Pulsex so that their community can actually be heard, and they can make a proposal to have their token added as a reward for single-sided staking through Pulsex.